Imagine being chased by a man for 3 whole years, only for him to dump you the moment he finds someone from a far wealthier family. The same man who once promised you forever suddenly asks you to forget everything and remain as just a friend, all because her family has money, power, and even a Rolls Royce with a private license plate. To him, you were no longer the woman he loved. You were just someone he had outgrown. But what he didn't know was that when love turns into humiliation, the only thing left burning in the heart is revenge. Now, let me introduce you to a woman named Zhen, a beautiful and elegant financial reporter known as one of the best in her field. Inside her office, Zhen was suddenly interrupted by an unexpected phone call. On the other end was the assistant of an important client, delivering disappointing news. The interview she had waited so long for had been postponed for another week. The moment she heard this, Zhen's expression changed. Interviews are all about timing. Waiting another week could mean losing the perfect opportunity. That was the only thought running through her mind. Rising from her seat, she pleaded with the assistant to ask Director Xian to somehow squeeze the interview into his schedule. If a face-to-face meeting was impossible, she was even willing to settle for a 2-hour phone interview. After a brief silence on the other end of the call, the assistant finally responded. Director Xi would be attending a dinner that night, and although he could arrange for her to wait there, he couldn't guarantee that the interview would actually happen. But Zhen had already made up her mind. Please, may I have the address? And with that, the call ended. Quietly, Zhen leaned against her desk, her mind filled with curiosity as she wondered who exactly was Director Xian. At only 27 years old, Xian had already achieved what many could only dream of. Using his own abilities, he took over Mingyu Bank when it was on the verge of collapse and single-handedly turned it around, making himself a legendary figure in the financial world. An interview with someone like him would attract massive attention, and Zhen knew exactly how valuable this opportunity was. But as she rested at her desk, her phone tightly clenched in her hand as she endured the painful cramps from her period. And to make things more complicated, today was also her boyfriend's birthday. Before she could think about anything else, her phone suddenly rang. It was her boyfriend. The moment she answered, the first thing he asked was when she would finish work so he could come pick her up. However, Zhen calmly explained that because of an important interview, she might not be able to make it tonight. She also had to cancel their movie date afterward, as she wasn't feeling well. Surprisingly, her boyfriend responded casually, "It's okay, it's just a birthday. We can always celebrate next year." Then he hung up. Zhen seemed completely relieved after the call, but her colleague wasn't convinced. She couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong. In her eyes, her boyfriend's unusually calm reaction was far too suspicious to simply ignore. Zhen paused for a moment. After thinking about it, she realized he never even asked why she wasn't feeling well. He simply ended the call without hesitation. But she quickly dismissed it, blaming her emotions on her period cramps. Soon, the sunset disappeared, and the darkness of night swallowed the entire city. Without wasting any more time, Zhen headed out to find Director Xian. Moments later, she sat inside a waiting room, patiently waiting for the opportunity that could change her career. But 2 hours had already passed, and there was still no sign of Xian. On top of the endless waiting, she had to endure the unbearable pain from her cramps. While Zhen remained focused on her laptop, a figure slowly stepped out from the door behind her. It was Qin, the second in command of Mingyu Group and the husband of Xian's older sister. Qin recognized the reporter, but before he could call out to her, Zhen's phone suddenly rang, leaving him momentarily hanging. Zhen answered the phone, and on the other end, the assistant apologized, explaining that the director wouldn't be able to make it due to urgent matters he needed to attend to after the dinner. "I understand." Zhen's voice became weak as disappointment filled her heart. Soon afterward, Zhen packed her bag and was about to leave, her face pale with disappointment. Just then, the massive doors slide open, and a crowd of guests began pouring out of the venue. And Zhen immediately recognized many familiar faces, powerful figures she had interviewed in the past. Still, deep inside, she held onto a small hope that she might finally meet Xian. At that moment, a slightly drunk guest recognized her and approached with a smile. "Ha ha, reporters, and what a coincidence. Let me give you a ride home." But Zhen politely refused. "Thank you, Mr. Lee, but my boyfriend is already coming to pick me up." Just then, from a distance, Shi Yan's in-law who had seen her earlier spotted Zhen as he was getting into his car. Also, Qin wasn't alone. Walking beside him was another man, and that man was none other than his in-law, the legendary director Shi Yan. Qin, recalling his experience with the reporter, described her as remarkable. After hearing from the secretary that she had waited all night for Shi Yan, he advised Shi Yan to go and give her a lift. Meanwhile, Zhen continued standing there patiently, waiting. Curiously, she searched online for a picture of Shi Yan, hoping to at least know what he looked like. But surprisingly, she couldn't find a single image of him. Just then, a luxurious car passing by suddenly pulled over right in front of her. As if that wasn't surprising enough, the chauffeur stepped out of the vehicle and walked straight toward her before respectfully opening the car door. Before she could understand what was happening, a calm and gentle masculine voice came from behind her. "Reporter Zhen." She slowly turned around. Standing before her was a handsome young man with a mysterious smile. "May I give you a lift?" Because of the man's young and handsome appearance, Zhen immediately assumed he was just another spoiled heir from a wealthy family. "No, thank you." After a brief pause, she politely added, "My boyfriend is already coming to pick me up." But what Zhen didn't know was that the man standing before her was the very person she had spent the entire day trying to meet. Shi Yan didn't explain himself. He simply gave a faint smirk before walking past her as if their brief encounter had never happened. Not long after, Zhen was finally picked up by her boyfriend. As they drove through the city, Zhen looked at him and asked the question she had been curious about all night. "Who did you spend your birthday with, babe? I hope you had fun." Her boyfriend hesitated for a moment, but before he could answer, Zhen casually added, "Was it Su Feng?" "Ah yes, Su Feng." "How did you know so quickly?" His reply sounded nervous, almost like someone who had been caught off guard. Then Zhen noticed something else unusual. A woman's perfume mixed with his usual cologne. "Does Su Feng have a girlfriend?" Hearing those words, her boyfriend suddenly became defensive. "Back off, I'm driving." Then, as if trying to avoid the conversation, he gently messed up her hair and added, "Be a good girl." Zhen became silent. She could only stare at her reflection on the car window, watching the rain slide down the glass while countless thoughts filled her mind. Soon, the heavy rain carried them back home. Zhen lies peacefully on the bed, finally getting a moment of rest after the exhausting events of the day. But suddenly, she realizes she can't remember where she put her phone. Sitting up immediately, Zhen began searching her memories. The only place she could have left it was inside her boyfriend's car. Just to be sure, she decided to track its location. But when the result appeared, confusion filled her face. The phone's location was pointing toward Jiang Hospital. Why would my phone be there? Zhen stared at the screen, completely lost in thought. Outside, the situation wasn't any better. The rain continued pouring mercilessly, covering the entire city in darkness. But even the heaviest rain couldn't stop Zhen from finding the truth. A short while later, she arrived outside Jiang Hospital, and, to her surprise, her boyfriend's car was really there. Her heart began racing as countless questions filled her mind. Before she could find an answer, a familiar figure slowly walked out of the hospital entrance. It was her boyfriend. Zhen's eyes immediately brightened. Perfect timing. She was about to call out to him, but then another woman appeared. The stranger gently leaned her head against his shoulder. Zhen froze. At that exact moment, thunder exploded across the sky, as if the heavens themselves were announcing the destruction of her world. She could only stand there, watching helplessly, as her boyfriend held another woman's hand and walked toward the car under the umbrella. Deep inside, Zhen still held onto one last hope. "Xingju, please push her away. If you do, I'll understand." But reality cruelly shattered that hope. Instead of pushing the woman away, her boyfriend pulled her closer, shielding her under his coat. And with the rain pouring around them, Zhen finally understood. All those strange signs she had ignored. All those moments where she convinced herself she was just overthinking. They were never just her imagination. The truth had been right in front of her all along. Staring at the bracelet wrapped around her wrist, her mind drifts back to those happier days, the future they dreamed about, and the bracelet he gave her as a symbol of their eternal love. But that beautiful memory was destroyed in seconds, right before her eyes. The man who promised forever was now kissing another woman beneath the rain. The same rain that made the scene look romantic, made Zhen's heartbreak even more painful. As she quietly hangs the commitment bracelet on the car handle, she turns and walks away. Later that night, Zhen returned home. She sat silently, replaying everything that had happened, trying to process the painful truth. Then, suddenly, the doorbell rang. After a moment of hesitation, she walked toward the door and opened it. But the person standing outside was the last person she expected to see. It was her boyfriend, or perhaps her ex-boyfriend. After a long, painful night lost in memories of the past, a new bright morning sun finally takes over. But for Zhen Shuyi, the new day brought no relief. She arrived at the company where she worked. Standing outside the chief editor's office, she gently knocked. After receiving permission to enter, Zhen slowly stepped inside. The chief editor was still focused on her computer, and without looking up, she welcomed Zhen with an urgent news. But the moment she finally raised her head, she froze. Standing before her was someone no different from a ghost. Zhen's pale face was impossible to ignore. Without even asking, she already knew something terrible had happened. Before the chief could say anything, Zhen's voice trembled. "I broke up with my boyfriend last night." Her words were broken, but the pain behind them was clear. It was obvious. Last night had been a nightmare she couldn't escape from. Her boyfriend had stood right in front of her and proudly talked about his new girlfriend. She's from an incredible family. Her uncle even drives a Rolls-Royce with a private license plate. There's only one of that kind in the entire Jiangxi. Although Xingju spoke gently, every word felt like a knife cutting deeper into Zhen's heart. "I used to love you, but now I think it's better if we just remain friends." The moment those words left his mouth, without hesitation, she crouched down and grabbed a box sitting nearby. Smash! She threw it straight at him. The contents scattered through the air as her anger finally exploded. "Who wants to be your friend? I would rather be your mother. Get lost." And just like that, the relationship she thought was forever ended in a single night. After listening to everything that happened, the chief editor couldn't hide her annoyance. But what truly angered the chief editor was the fact that this shameless man even took Zhen's most expensive brooch before walking away. As the person who brought Zhen into financial reporting, the chief editor always believed in her talent, beauty, and ability to attract any man she desired. After recalling the humiliation she suffered the night before, Zhen couldn't help but ask, what kind of man could possibly help her take revenge against someone backed by a family that owns a Rolls-Royce? He drives a Rolls-Royce, so what? The chief's voice was firm and fierce as she reminded Zhen of her limitless potential to attract any man she desired. The chief handed Zhen a file document and reminded her not to let her personal life interfere with her work. Before leaving, she gave her final instruction: gather your emotions and head to the financial center for the summit meeting. Not long after, Zhen arrived at the financial center. Inside a nearby coffee shop, she bought a drink and prepared to leave. But she regretted ever entering the place. Why? Because her ex-boyfriend's company was located nearby. Unfortunately, this was the only coffee shop around, and when it comes to terrible timing, this was exactly what we meant. Because right as Zhen approached the exit, two familiar figures appeared at the door, her ex-boyfriend and his new girlfriend. Zhen froze. How unlucky, she whispered to herself. Seeing her, Xingju immediately lowered his head and whispered to his new girlfriend, "Babe, let's come back another time." But his girlfriend refused.
"I'll get sick if I don't drink hot cocoa from this shop every day."
At that moment, Zhen finally understood. This woman already knew a lot about her. But then, something else caught her attention. The bracelet on the woman's wrist. The same bracelet Zhen had left behind in the car. The bracelet that once represented their love and commitment. Her eyes narrowed. Then slowly, she smiled while brushing her hair back. Looks like this bastard never changes. Her confidence words struck a nerve, causing the couple to clench their teeth in anger. But Zhen still had one final blow to deliver. She casually tossed the empty coffee cup into the trash bin and added with a confident smile, "Some people really do love second-hand things." But even after delivering that savage comeback, Zhen's anger was far from gone. The fire inside her was still burning. The moment she stepped out of the coffee shop, she couldn't help herself. Bam! Her foot slammed hard against the nearby pole. She stood there trying to calm her boiling emotions. It's not worth getting angry over people like them. Adding to her annoyance, not far away, her ex-boyfriend stood with his new girlfriend, openly gossiping about her. Their voices carried through the air, making sure every word reached Zhen's ears. But then, something suddenly caught Zhen's attention. A car parked nearby, a Rolls-Royce, and the private license plate, SIA666. Then it hit her. This was the exact same Rolls-Royce from last night's unforgettable encounter, the very car her ex-boyfriend had used to describe his new girlfriend's wealthy and influential uncle. Slowly, Zhen began putting the pieces together. The truth finally became clear, and that realization became the very fuel that ignited her determination. The importance of having a powerful figure standing behind you, just like her ex-boyfriend mentioned before, and the ability to attract any man she desired, exactly as the chief editor had always believed. Zhen slowly approached the car with determination, vowing to make sure her ex-boyfriend and his mistress pay by calling her auntie one day. And in the end, she swore to turn the mistress's family upside down. She smiled confidently, because she believed this was the perfect opportunity to begin her comeback. Leaning slightly toward the tinted window, she knocked once. Knock. No response. She knocked again. Knock. Knock. Still nothing. Curious, Zhen leaned closer, trying to see through the dark glass. But before she could get a better look, the window slowly began lowering, and once it fully rolled down, the mysterious person inside was finally revealed. And the moment Zhen saw his face, she froze. It was the same handsome young man she had rejected days ago, the one she thought was just another spoiled rich kid. Still completely unaware of his true identity, Zhen continued with her motive, believing it would be easy since this man had once shown interest in her. Using her dead phone as an excuse, she requested to use his phone to call a taxi before subtly suggesting that he could give her a ride instead if he was willing. The man said nothing. He simply sighed and stared directly into her eyes. "I don't give rides to women who already have boyfriends." Those words sent a wave of embarrassment down Zhen's spine before she could say anything else. Screech. The car suddenly reversed. Vroom. At lightning speed, the Rolls-Royce disappeared into the distance. Zhen stood there speechless, watching as her self-esteem left along with the speeding Rolls-Royce. Later that night, Zhen sat quietly in her room, replaying everything that had happened. The powerful uncle she wanted for her revenge turned out to be the very man she had unknowingly offended. Her revenge plan failed before it even started, all because of her own pettiness. Zhen sighed deeply. Her love life was already a complete disaster. There was no point dwelling on it anymore. From now on, she decided to put all her focus into her career. The day Zhen had been waiting for finally arrived. The day of her long-awaited interview with Xian. This time she swore that nothing would stand in her way. Upon arriving at the venue, Zhen was guided to the reception desk to complete the attendance registration before proceeding inside. But the moment she picked up the pen, something caught her attention. The names written on the attendance sheet. Among them was a name she recognized immediately. Yuling, another reporter from the same company. And unfortunately, they were far from friends. Over the past 2 years, Yuling had stolen several important interviews that originally belonged to Zhen. Determined not to lose another opportunity, Zhen immediately rushed inside, hoping this time history would not repeat itself. Soon, the elevator doors opened, and standing in front of her was a familiar figure, Shi Yan's secretary. The secretary looked surprised to see her. "Secretary Chun." Zhen greeted him with relief. "Good timing. About my appointment with Director Shi this afternoon at 3:30. But before she could finish, Secretary Chun interrupted. Didn't something come up for you? His expression was full of confusion, because according to him, her colleague had suddenly shown up that morning to conduct the interview. And coincidentally, director she happened to be free at that exact moment. Zhen froze. Someone had stolen her interview again, and she knew exactly who was behind this. Before the conversation could continue, a figure suddenly emerged from the door behind them, instantly drawing everyone's attention in the hall. And the moment Zhen finally saw the man's face clearly, her eyes widened in pure shock. Little uncle. Her mind went completely blank. Before she could catch up with reality, the secretary suddenly turned and spoke with deep respect. Director Xian? For a brief moment, everything went silent in her mind. Her brain froze. The name director she echoed repeatedly in her head like a broken record. The mysterious rich kid she thought was just a spoiled heir, the influencer uncle of her ex-boyfriend's new girlfriend, was actually the financial genius she had been desperately trying to interview. Zhen stood frozen in place, her eyes fixed on Secretary Chun as he whispered something into Xian's ear. Before she could make sense of it, Xian lifted his gaze. His cold, unreadable eyes landed directly on her. For a brief moment, Zhen forced a warm smile, thinking everything was still under control, but in the next instant, Xian stepped forward. Without even acknowledging her presence, he simply walked past her as if she was nothing more than empty air. Zhen stood there speechless. But would she let him just walk away? No, she couldn't allow that. This interview was too important to lose. Filled with conviction, Zhen adjusted her stance and stepped forward. Director she called out firmly, determined to claim her anti-title. The moment Xian stopped, Zhen quickly seized the opportunity. She reminded him of their scheduled appointment for that afternoon. She also expressed how long she had been waiting for this interview, how important it was to her, and how much effort she had put into securing this moment. Still wearing that admirable smile, she softly pleaded for him to spare even a small portion of his precious time. Xian didn't say much. He simply stood there, quietly observing as small drops of tension seemed to fall from Zhen's hands. Then, suddenly, Zhen stepped forward again. Her heels echoed through the hall with confidence. Just a bit of your time. Would that be all right? She continued pleading softly. Her eyes were gentle and captivating, soft enough to melt hesitation, yet filled with a quiet determination that was almost impossible to ignore. But Xian couldn't bring himself to look directly into them. Instead, he turned away and slowly walked toward the elevator. Zhen lowered her head slightly in disappointment. I failed. But just as the elevator doors were about to close, Xian slightly tilted his head toward her. Then come in. His voice was cold, but his intention was not. Inside the elevator, Zhen could barely contain her excitement. She finally got the interview she had been chasing. She was just about to ask about their destination when Xian's phone suddenly began to ring repeatedly. After checking the caller ID, he silently declined the call. Seconds later, the secretary's phone rang instead. Just as the secretary answered the call, a young woman's voice came through the speaker. Tell my uncle to pick up his phone. A faint smile curled on Zhen's lips. It's that woman, my ex-boyfriend's new girlfriend. The secretary glanced at Xian. Sir, your niece is calling again. The director didn't take the phone. Instead, he delivered a clear and firm message to his niece. If you act out at home, I don't want to see you. His voice carried absolute authority. Zhen's smile widened slightly. A strict uncle. She thought to herself, perfect. Her revenge plan suddenly started forming in her mind again. Just you wait, mistress. Before she could fall deeper into her thoughts, the massive exit doors opened. Xian walked out calmly, making his way toward the car. Without looking back, he mentioned that the ride would only take 2 hours. 2 hours was more than enough for Zhen to finally get what she came for. Okay. Soon, they were inside the car. Xian entered first. The moment he removed his glasses and glanced to the side, he paused. For a brief moment, he was captivated by the fragrance and presence of the woman stepping inside. But quickly, he regained control and adjusted his glasses again. Meanwhile, Zhen sat there with absolute confidence, looking like a woman who had already calculated her next move and believed victory was within her grasp. Are you cold? Shi Yan's gentle voice suddenly echoed beside her. It was just a simple question, but to Zhen, those 3 words felt like another test she couldn't afford to fail. While regaining her professional composure with a calm smile, she shook her head. No, I'm fine. I'm actually quite warm. Shi Yan simply nodded and suggested opening the window, but that was definitely not what Zhen meant when she said she was feeling warm. Still, she couldn't argue with him. The moment the window opened, a strong breeze swept through the car, brushing through her hair. Zhen reached into her purse, pulled out a hair tie, and quickly secured her hair. Then she pulled out her recording pen and put on a confident smile. Can we begin now? With Shi Yan's silent approval, Zhen's tense expression finally eased as she smiled in relief. She straightened herself and smoothly transitioned into the interview topic without wasting another second. As the interview continued, Shi Yan's gaze gradually turned colder. He noticed something strange. Zhen's speech mirrored the same script her colleague had used earlier that morning. But still, Shi Yan remained calm, his expression unreadable. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, yet every word carried quiet intelligence and an undeniable confidence. At his words, Zhen could no longer suppress her excitement. She was finally face to face with the financial giant she had dreamed of interviewing. The interview went on for quite a while, and Zhen did her best to keep up with Shi Yan's pace, but his words carried a quiet pressure that made it difficult to relax even for a second. Before she knew it, nearly 2 hours had passed. Finally, the intense session came to an end. A brief moment of silence filled the room, followed by a wave of relief washing over Zhen. When she glanced at Shi Yan, she froze for a moment. For a brief second, she found herself captivated by his appearance. Despite his cold and somewhat unusual temperament, there was no denying it. His face was strikingly charming. Since Shi Yan wasn't looking at her, Zhen took the chance to secretly admire him, her mind drifting into thoughts of admiration. But suddenly, Shi Yan slightly turned his head and calmly asked, "Is the interview over?" Zhen, caught off guard, accidentally blurted out, "I'm done looking." The moment the words left her mouth, she froze. Her face instantly turned red as she realized how embarrassing it sounded. She quickly covered her face, hoping the ground would open up and swallow her. But before the awkward silence could get any worse, the driver announced their arrival, saving Zhen from her embarrassing situation. Shi Yan calmly stepped out of the car. 2 hours are already up. You can leave now. Zhen froze. She looked out through the window, and only then did she realize they were in the middle of nowhere. The moment Zhen stepped out of the car, one question immediately flashed through her mind. How am I supposed to get back from here? On a horse? She stood there speechless, finally realizing she had completely underestimated the situation. Then she turned, only to see Shi Yan already walking away, leaving her behind. "Mr. Shi." She quickly followed. "I still have one more question." Shi Yan stopped. "Go ahead." Zhen hesitated for a moment. "It's just a small personal question." Shi Yan raised his eyes slightly. Taking a deep breath, Zhen finally asked the question she had been holding back. "Do you have a girlfriend?" The atmosphere fell silent. Zhen maintained her bright smile, her eyes filled with anticipation. At this moment, Zhen thought she was finally taking control of her revenge plan. But little did she know, the man in front of her was about to turn her entire world upside down. And this is where we end today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications to keep up with our weekly uploads.